a political struggle, a hot time, and hey, land's got to eat too. Shalom, I'm the Messianic Torah dude, and this week's Torah portion is Korah. Korah, or Korah, comes to us from Numbers chapter 16, verse 1 through 18, verse 32. This week's Torah portion is named after Korah, and he's an interesting guy that we're going to learn some more about. So let's look at Numbers chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the sons of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moshe with a number of people of Israel, 250 chiefs of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men. They assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said to them, "You have gone too far, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" See, Korah and his crew of 250 chiefs, they were upset because they felt like Moshe was hogging all the power, essentially. They said, "Hey, what makes you so special?" Now we know, because we have the history of hindsight, and Korah should have known, because he had the benefit of present sight, that Moshe was chosen by the Lord to be the leader. But Korah wanted to make a power grab. He wanted to take some authority away from Moshe. And comparing Korah and Moshe, we can kind of see some different lessons that we can learn about leadership. See, Moshe was probably the second best example of godly leadership we have in Scripture, second only to Yeshua, which that's a pretty good person to come in second to. I mean, let's face it, everybody comes in second to Yeshua. Let's look at some things we can learn about leadership from Moshe. Number one, Moshe didn't seek out leadership. In Exodus chapter 4, we have Moshe constantly making excuses. First he says, "What if the people don't listen to me? Well, I'm not a good speaker." He has all of these reasons why the Lord should pick somebody else to be the leader. But the Lord has chosen him. Now, we can never know without a time-traveling blue box why specifically Moshe wanted to reject that leadership. There are a lot of different theories. I'm going to present three possible theories. Number one, or should I say subpoint A? I don't know. He understood that leadership was not a role of power, but a role of service. He understood, even before Yeshua's time, what Yeshua meant when he said in Matthew chapter 20, verse 25, "But Yeshua called to them and said, 'You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave.'" Moshe understood that leadership was actually an act of service. Unlike Korah, Korah thought leadership was just everybody looks up to me and everybody does what I say and I get to boss everybody around. That's what Korah thought leadership was. Next, I think Moshe understood the weight of leadership. In Hebrews, or Messianic Jews, chapter 13, it talks about how elders are people who will be held to account. Leaders in the congregation, in the community of Messiah, are held to a higher standard because they are accountable for people. And this is a perfect definition of what godly leadership is, because leadership is not inherently power, it is responsibility with the power to fulfill that responsibility. Meaning, a leader can tell somebody what to do because the leader is responsible for that person. Just like how a parent can tell a child, "Don't eat that thing off the floor," or "Don't lick think your brother, I had a weird childhood. Anyway, because they're responsible for keeping that child healthy. And Moshe understood the weight of that responsibility. And of course, we have Moshe's humility. It says in the Torah that Moshe was the most humble man who had ever lived. The number two thing we can learn about leadership from Moshe, leadership requires submitting to the Lord. Back in Numbers chapter 16, verses 4 through 7, it says, when Moshe heard this, the complaint from Korah and his people, he fell on his face and said to Korah and all his company, in the morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will bring them near him. The one whom he chooses he will bring to him. Do this, take censers, Korah and all his company, put fire in them, and put incense on them before the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be holy. You have gone too far, sons of Levi. Moshe knew that he had been chosen by the Lord. And this was an example of him demonstrating that he was chosen by the Lord. Essentially saying, Lord, I'm trusting that you will back me up. But if the Lord had chosen Korah, then Moshe, because of his obedience, would have gone along with it. Because Moshe, unless he was hitting a rock, was obedient. This might not have been the best example, but it was within the Torah portion. So, the third thing we can learn about leadership from Moshe, leadership requires sacrifice, or at least a willingness to sacrifice. In Numbers 16, verses 41 through 48, this is after the Lord had struck down Korah and everybody who was involved in his rebellion by the ground opening up and devouring the family of Korah. But on the next day, all the congregation of the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. And when the congregation had assembled against Moses and against Aaron, they turned towards the tent of meeting, and behold, a cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. And Moshe and Aharon came to the front of the tent of meeting. And the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, get away from the midst of the congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces. And Moshe said to Aaron, take your censer, and put fire in it from off the altar, and lay incense on it, and carry it quickly to the congregation, and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun. So Aaron took it, as Moshe said, and ran into the midst of the assembly, and behold, the plague had already begun among the people. And he put the incense, and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. Now in this example, Aaron's the one literally running into the middle of people dropping dead from a plague. Yet he is willing to make this sacrifice. And we have other examples of Moshe showing that he is willing to make this sacrifice. The number four thing we can learn, and this is also demonstrated by this story, a good leader does not require you to be worthy. The people of Israel, all they did was kvetch. Like, as we read through the book of Numbers, like you could rename the book of Numbers the book of kvetching, because that's like the whole book. They gripe, they complain, they whine, and they blame Moshe for all of their problems. And yet, he's still willing to serve them as a leader. And of course, we have the perfect example of leadership. And the person who did all of these things that Moshe did and more, Yeshua. Yeshua is the perfect leader. If you want to learn how to be a perfect leader, you can look at the life of Moshe, and you can look at the life of Yeshua, and you can learn from both of them. So what are some other ways that we can learn about leadership from the example of Moshe? Let me know in the comments, and if we gave you a laugh, give us a like, and if you learned something, give us a share.
I can't believe you talked about leadership without talking about the best leader that there ever was, the President Ronald Grubb. Now I've got to do the only thing that a leader can't do when somebody is talking bad about him, and that is get on Twitter. No exit espresso, more like no more jerks at the jerk store. out at you.
Okay. I'm the Messianic Torah dude. Shalom, and stay in the Word.